So today I'm working on this family of mallard ducks in charcoal, and I'll be using some colored pastels just to add a little bit of color to some fine details in here. The male is a drake, that's what we call a male duck. The female is a hen, and of course the baby ducklings are ducklings. Mallards are one of the most common ducks found basically all over the world except Antarctica, which of course basically has penguins and not much else. Where they weren't native to, they have been introduced because they are the species that most of our domestic duck breeds have originated from. Mallards are omnivorous, so they eat both plant and animal material, mostly plant material throughout most of the year, and then they eat invertebrates and sometimes small fish or even some smaller frogs as well. But if you choose to feed the mallards, please remember that bread is not really the healthiest diet for them. They would prefer much less processed plant material, so something like cracked corn or, bird seed. They are a bird technically, or something like grapes or peas or things like that. They're actually one of the few animals, because they don't have a great sense of smell, that will eat skunk cabbage as well. Although I would not suggest picking it for them, just let them eat it where they want. Here in Michigan, which is about halfway down their range, some of our mallards will migrate through the winter and some will stay put, particularly if they have a solid food source like a municipal park or something like that. And some of them will be migrants from further north that have actually migrated south to Michigan. And they have some specialized adaptations for surviving the winter. So they have, insulating feathers with a layer of down. They have the waterproof feathers on the outside, like a lot of birds do, particularly those by the water. And they also have a counter current in their specialized in their circulatory system, so that the warm blood that's flowing into their feet warms the blood that's flowing back toward the heart, and that keeps their feet from freezing during the winter time when they're in the cold water. I've never worked with domestic mallards, but I have pet sat for a couple of domestic ducks in the past a few times. And they're kind of interesting animals, and I've definitely seen my fair share of mallards at every nature center I worked at, as long as there was so much of a puddle of water for them to sit in. Mallards are everything that you think of when you think of a duck. They have that quack sound. They have that thick, heavy body that splashes into the water when they land. It's just quintessential duck. Mallards sit on their eggs and incubate them for about 28 days. Once the ducklings are hatched, they are able to swim and walk immediately, not fly quite yet. So they'll stay with their mother for about 60 more days, learning how to be that quintessential duck. When I was working at Cranbrook, they'd often ask me, every year there would be a duckling or two that was laid in the courtyard area and then would get stuck in there, and we'd have to try to reunite them with the mom, or with a mom that hopefully wasn't counting how many eggs she had. And if you know me, you know that I'm a little more into, I don't know how to say it, into the natural order of things rather than just trying to save every animal, because that's never going to happen. Every individual, it's never going to happen. And other animals have to eat too. So I really wanted to feed the baby ducklings to our great horned owls. Unfortunately, in a kind way, I would have euthanized them first. I'm not saying to feed them live, but I was unfortunately vetoed by every other staff member who decided poor little baby ducklings because they're cute. But when it comes to rats, the owls have to eat, right? Doesn't seem fair. Besides great horned owls, there's also a plethora of animals that would eat a mallard duck, especially the ducklings. Like with most animals, the majority of predation takes place in that first year. While their ducklings are still small, snapping turtles might eat them. Their entire life, a coyote would be very happy with a mallard duck. A Cooper's hawk definitely would be quite pleased with some ducklings. I'm not sure if a full-size mallard would be too much of a meal for a Cooper's or not, but definitely for a red tail. I mean, if you're in the wild and you're an animal that eats meat, then you're definitely gonna try for it. You're not gonna turn up your nose and say, oh no, not duck again. So I did this sketch with nobody in particular in mind. This one will be available if anyone's interested and wants to own this little family of mallards. Just let me know. Send me an email or whatever, and I'll try my best to get it to you in a cheap little shipping frame, and you can have your very own drake hen and ducklings. In a couple seconds here, you'll see that I am using actually a beauty blender, a makeup tool to blend some of the charcoal in. I found this a pretty helpful tool. I ended up getting a set that was on a really good clearance deal with some makeup brushes too, which I've used before in some of my painting. One year I did a bird day camp, which was great. We had 6 kids in it. One because his friend was in it, so the first day of bird camp, and we get to know each other, and I asked what everyone's favorite bird was. This kid said, I hate birds. So that was fun. So he really wasn't happy with a lot of the activities we did, but there was one that he seemed to enjoy. So the activity that we did was painting our own blank white rubber duckies. And one of the young gentlemen that was in the camp, he used a mallard beanie baby as his inspiration, and he painted the cutest little pastel mallard drake that you've ever seen. I couldn't have done a better job myself. And this activity with the blank white rubber ducks and painting them, it's been very versatile for me. Everybody seems to love it no matter how I use it. I got 100 of the blank white ducks, rubber duckies on Amazon, and I used them for a preschool program I did on loons. So it was a very guided painting. I pre-painted them all black and gave them red eyes, and then had the kids add the white specks for the loon on his back. That way I only had to buy white paint pens in bulk, and they turned out looking like loons. I've also used them, like I said, in bird camp, and I've used them as prizes in scavenger hunts. So after the scavenger hunt was over, everyone got a rubber ducky, and we had the paint pens out, and you could paint it. And a lot of the adults took part in it too, because who doesn't want to paint their own rubber duck? And normally I would be the first to say, oh, that a loon is not a duck. Amanda, what are you thinking? But considering these rubber ducks have been made into like dump trucks and I don't know, like Frankensteins and everything else you can think of, I think that keeping them within the taxonomy of birds is completely appropriate. I've actually gotten a little bit ahead of myself here and did some preliminary outlines for a few of my upcoming drawings. So now it's going to be hard to choose which one to do next. I've got some pretty exciting ideas, I think. I don't want to give too much away, but I recently realized that paper doesn't have to be white. It actually comes in different colors, even for drawing on. So I've got an elk, a garter snake, a crayfish, and a rosy maple moth that are all just waiting to be, well, completed. Um, so if you have a preference of which one comes next, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I will probably be doing the elk next just because I really like to ramble on about cervids or deer that are in Michigan. So I didn't record, but I did add a little bit of puddle up here to make our mallards happy so that they could have some water. And I framed it with a mat just to see how it would look. This is how I'll store and ship it, but I'm not a fan of the mat. As always, thanks for watching. Follow, like, subscribe if that's what you're into. And we'll see you next time.